Are you an expert looking for ways to build your business? Do you have an important message that you know is going to impact the lives of others? Do you want to learn from some of the leading experts in a variety of industries on how to position your message, grow your business, and increase your revenues? Then you're in the right place with Power Up for Profits. Hey everybody, it's Kathleen Gage with Power Up for Profits podcast. Today I'm thrilled to have my featured expert, Maureen Healy, who actually has been in healthcare for well over 3 decades. And it's her life's work, it's her passion. And she's not only a nurse practitioner, she was a nurse for 27 years. She's an author and she's also an entrepreneur. And her business model is fascinating. I'm really looking forward to digging into that today. And her book called Your Guide to a Safe and Swift Hospital Stay is something I sure wish I would have had when I was taking care of my mother 10 years ago, because my mom was in the hospital a lot and it just would have been nice to have a point of reference. So with that, Maureen, great to have you here.
Thank you, Kathleen. It's good to be here.
Well, you know, I know that you have been in healthcare for quite some time. You were a nurse for 27 years and then you became a nurse practitioner. What's the difference between the two?
A registered nurse is, well, it's a hierarchy thing. So you have a bachelor, you can have an associate or a bachelor's degree to be a registered nurse. But to go on to become a nurse practitioner, you have to get at least a master's degree in nursing. And it allows you to diagnose and prescribe and have a lot more autonomy than a registered nurse.
So is that why you decided to become a nurse practitioner, so that you would have more autonomy and you could actually have more control?
Well, no, not really.
Okay.
I actually just wanted to, I knew I wanted to write the book, and I wanted to I was actually going for my master's in nursing education because I liked educating the patients, the families, and I just naturally thought I would go in that direction. And then when I was in the program, it was a couple more classes to become a nurse practitioner, and I thought, what the heck? Actually opened.
Hey, what the heck?
Yeah, it opened more doors, and
Awesome.
I went with that route. So, and it was something I had planned for about a good solid 10 years to go back and get. So.
Okay. And going prior to you becoming a nurse and then a nurse practitioner, tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, my father was a physician and my mother was a registered nurse, and I was raised with 8 brothers and 1 sister. So I played for those first 20 years. But I actually, at 14, I had the option of going and helping my dad in his office or cooking dinner for my 6 brothers at the time. And I I didn't want to cook dinner for my brothers. So I went over to my dad and said, what do you want me to do? And he taught me how to do vitals right off the bat, the blood pressure, the heart rate, and how to prepare the patient for his evaluation. And
so this was it at the age of 14?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
And then at 16, I was a nurse's aide at the local hospital. And then I stayed in the hospital for the rest of until 14.
That's incredible. So what drove you to write the book? And again, let me show people the book cover, and it's called Your Guide to a Safe and Swift Hospital Stay, available on Amazon.
Thank you. It was actually, I realized there was a need, but it came from after my mom had come to visit me over an Easter holiday, and she was involved in a car accident and she broke several bones. And so now I became, from being the nurse to the other side of the bed, when I got thrown into the family position, it opened up a lot of realization that there was such a need for what to do as being an active part of the healthcare team. So basically, at that point in time, I knew that I had to prevent complications and promote recovery and the complications. And she was 74 at the time, so it was crucial that I prevented those complications. And they were pretty much the infections, pneumonia, blood clots, and promoting recovery. Kathleen, at that age, majority of people, when they're involved in that kind of trauma, they'll get out of the hospital, but few of them ever get back to where they were before the accident. And I wanted my mom back 100%. where she was. And so I had to work her. So, and basically my experiences of working her every day, and that is the getting her moving and feeding her the right kind of foods and just becoming a part of that healthcare team for the families. And I made it in the book. It talks about a triangle that I created, and it's the physicians are on one side, nurses are on the other, the patients in the middle, and then the families, friends, caregivers. They're coming in, and they need to be watching out for what's going on for the patient. But especially in today's age, with all of everybody's so incredibly busy. The doctors, the nurses, the pharmacists, every department is incredibly busy and stressed. And I can't even imagine how bad it is right now in the hospitals with COVID going on top of the current stressors. So because of this environment, it's much easier to make a mistake, going into from a nurse's point of view, going into the wrong room or grabbing the wrong chart and going in the right room. But the errors can happen a lot more frequently. And that's why it's crucial for families to want to become a part of that healthcare team. So they watch out. And the book is teaching them what to look for. And those errors.
I love the way you set the book up. It's the story of your mom's accident, and then every chapter builds on each other. And so I encourage people to check out the book. And the reason I wanted you on the show, not only to educate people about what they can do for a safe hospital stay, but I have a lot of authors who listen to this show, and you're a first-time author, and you're not in your 20s. And so a lot of people say, oh, it's too late for me to write the book. What would you say to those authors who they've been thinking, the wannabe authors who have been thinking of writing a book, and yet they keep putting it off, thinking that they're either too old, they don't know enough, who am I to write a book? How do you address that?
I say, go for it. I mean, you either go for it or you don't.
Right.
And I took a lot of years to complete that book, and took a lot of years to get back to school. But there's a lot of all the other work issues during your 20s, 30s, and 40s. You're working and raising your family. And so I realize that there's a lot of other time is a constraint, a restraint on most of us. And so it is an issue. But if it's something you want to do, and you just find the time and one day at a time, and just keep working it.
Exactly. So this is Kathleen Gage with Power Up for Profits. I'm talking to Maureen Healy, who is the author of Your Guide to a Safe and Swift Hospital Stay. And this book was published recently. Really easy read, fast read, powerful read. Now, when you think about the people who are going to read your book, who's your ideal reader?
All families, friends, and caregivers that find themselves in the hospital with their loved ones. And originally I was going to say 40s and 50s and women, but that's not really true. It's when your family member or your friend or your neighbor gets hospitalized and you're visiting them, then you need the information, because even if you're there for an hour, that just listening and for an example, a nurse could come in and say, "Hi, Mrs. Jones," and yet the patients and patients, especially the older ones, if they can't hear well or a language barrier, they will shake their head yes out of conditioning. We just will agree with that nurse coming in, and their name could be Jones Smith and not Mrs. Jones. I mean, it could be, these are the mild and minor mistakes that can turn into major problems afterwards. So the families, so anybody that just happens to go and say, wait a minute, that's not her name. And that's deferring, that's preventing a potential mistake.
Nice. So let me ask you this. How do people reach you? What's your web address?
virtualhealing.com. So it's one word, virtualhealing.com. It's my website, and all the you can email me, text me, schedule an appointment.
Now, and in scheduling an appointment, what would one be able to expect if they schedule an appointment with you?
Virtual Healing is a telehealth service to help people with their healthcare needs. And I'm going more on telehealth side versus telemedicine, at least at this time.
Huh.
And it's looking and helping people from a holistic point of view. So that's mind, body, spirit. And just because I have found over the years that so many problems, that illnesses that we have today actually come from our personal lives and the stress that's going on at home. I look at the entire picture and
Nice.
and what people are doing, and then make suggestions based on what they're telling me.
Well, and speaking of the entire picture, again, I'm talking with Maureen Healy, who is a nurse practitioner, author of the book, Your Guide to a Safe and Swift Hospital Stay. I recommend you go to Amazon, pick up your own copy, and definitely leave a review, because I know that you'll get a lot of value out of this book. One of the things that you're offering in your business is COVID advising, or you were explaining it to me, and it's a business model where you actually work with corporations where they can do testing. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. It's not testing yet. It's screening.
Okay. And what's the difference?
So testing is where we're actually swabbing, or the self-swab of the nose, and they run the test, the specimen to lab, or it gets, lab runs the test. But screening is simply screening the high risk if they're sick, and going through their symptoms and evaluating if it could be COVID based on what they're telling you and who they've been around, and then if they need testing or not. So that's one angle. That's what we're doing right now.
Excellent.
But it's in development stage. I'd like to do more of a prevention aspect, because COVID, and I just want to just say something to all the listeners that my heart goes out to you, that those that have had to deal with this pandemic in a more serious, where your loved ones have died or they've had to suffer from this terrible pandemic. And what I have come to realize is coronavirus is not going away. It's here in our lives. So what we can do is to, most likely, we might be lucky and be able to eradicate it. But until then, if we, as a population, strengthen our own bodies and fight this bug, then our symptoms will be milder. They won't, or maybe even asymptomatic. And fighting it if you are diabetic, then you want to keep your blood sugar within normal range. If you want to get your A1C as low as you can get it, improve on that number, and make good dietary choices to keep your sugar and on track. And also for the hypertensive people, keep your blood pressure better. Increase your physical activity and make good dietary choices, and you will keep your numbers better, and the virus won't stay long. It won't be so devastating to you if you can keep your health in better check.
Well, let's talk about some of those areas where people can actually stay healthier, because we also have a lot of entrepreneurs that listen to the show. And I know that entrepreneurs actually limit themselves by not doing all they can to be in peak physical condition. And it doesn't mean going out and running marathons. It doesn't mean being bodybuilders. It simply means being in peak physical health. So what are some recommendations that you have, Maureen, that people can implement that will help them to perform better, to live healthier, and to just be a better person?
Well, you have to increase your physical activity at 20, 30 minutes a day on most days. And it doesn't matter what activity you choose, as long as you're increasing your heart rate. And it's your heart muscle. And that's what people need to think about. It's the only muscle, the only heart we get. So you may as well increase it, get it working better, and get it working every day, get the rate up. And as a result of that muscle getting in better shape, it circulates the blood, the whole system circulates and responds better, and all your numbers come down. So right off the bat, your numbers get better. Your weight will come down, and your heart rate and your blood pressure and such. But in addition, you actually have to have your mind clear too, and not allow those fearful thoughts get into your brain and take over, and the anxiety and everything else that can blur our vision and our thoughts. And I suggest laughter. You find something that makes you laugh or smile, because our bodies produce endorphins, and that will help. That helps everything. It helps our whole outlook. And so it's mind, body, spirit, and then tap into whatever spiritual belief system you're into. And again, it's what we're eating, and we can pick. It's whatever we're eating. You can pick bad foods that cause a lot of inflammation, the prepackaged foods, or more. I personally encourage more fruits and vegetables because they're higher in vitamin C. They're more natural. They boost the immune system, and it just helps the body. And it promotes wellness, basically. But our dietary choices is definitely a factor, as well as what we're watching and the amount of stress we're having. When you feel stressed, you've got to walk away and find something that you like. Take time to smell the roses.
Awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about your process for writing this book. How long did it take you to write the book, from the first day that you started writing to when it actually got published?
Oh, don't ask that one, Kathleen. That was way too long. I actually finished it the first time in 2010, right when I was starting the master's degree. And then I put it away, and then I dabbled with it a little bit here and there. And then I met somebody in September of 19, and she encouraged me to finish it. So I stopped everything and just finished it. So I really, from September to December, I finished it right at the end of the year.
Excellent. Well, and that just goes to show that, there is a process that goes into writing a book.
But the good thing that it's kind of good that I took so long to do it, because back in the 90s, people weren't ready to hit I used to encourage the patients' families to help out. I mean, they were those that wanted to, and it was just little jobs I'd give them in the ER and get them to become more aware of certain things. But most of them, they weren't ready. That transition from when our parents were young and there was no interaction. You don't question doctors, you don't question nurses, and now people are pretty much have accepted that you need to step up and ask questions. You need to be an active advocate and know what's going on. And it just benefits your loved one if you know what's going on.
Absolutely. When my mom was in the hospital, myself and one of my sisters, we were her advocates, and there were things that we definitely needed to intervene with and just say, no, this is not acceptable, or tell us more about this. And it also helped when she was getting information from the doctor for us to be there, to be able to be a second and third pair of ears, because the patient, from my experience with my mother, the patient doesn't hear always the truth. They hear what they want to hear, and so
they're not comfortable. They're pain. They hurt.
True.
And they're not in their normal space, and neither is the family. But they don't. There's a lot of medications probably being given to them, and so they're not 100%. So you need the family to listen to the doctor and to ask questions. Absolutely. Again, I'm talking with Maureen Healy, who is a nurse practitioner and the author of Your Guide to a Safe and Swift Hospital Stay. Maureen, what would you say has been the biggest surprise about having your book published? Anything unexpected happen as a result of having your book published? Just the amazing feedback. Every person has contacted me that I've known, they've just thanked me and said they passed it on to their friends, parents, and such, and that it was they were grateful for the book. It helped them. So so I maybe should have finished it 15 years ago.
Well, no, everything's in its right time. So do you have a second book in the works?
It's in my brain. Hopefully it won't take. I know that's kind of scary, but no, it's I'm in the next 12 to 18 months. I should have it out. It's patient advocacy, and I want to expand on that angle, and especially with telemedicine coming out and virtual medicine and how it will affect in the next few years. We'll see how it's going to affect advocacy and all the results coming back, because that's it. You got to know that when your loved one gets you get tests done and blood work drawn, you want those results. You want to know, are they normal or are they abnormal? What do we do? What's next? And that's all part of the advocacy. And then with the population, really that baby boomer taking it to the next level in retirement. And so it's just important that we have people that we love, that love us.
Absolutely. And I know a lot of elderly people are kind of resistant to the telemedicine because they're so ingrained in your face-to-face with your nurse or your doctor. My mother-in-law, her doctor is trying to get her to do more telemedicine. I don't know what he's calling it, but and she's really she goes, no, I need to go in and I need to see him. Well, right now with COVID going on, that's not as practical as it used to be. And where do you see things going with COVID? And what again? Let's talk a little bit more. You gave some input and ideas about what people can do to minimize their risk, but how important is it for people to wear masks and not just for themselves, but for, elderly people in their lives? So talk to us about that.
Yes, masks and social distancing. It's because it protects us. It protects everybody. It's the respiratory droplets can easily go within that 4 to 6 feet out. And once it gets into your system, and it can either not cause any problems or minimal problems, or it can get into the lungs and cause all kinds of problems that we all know about. So right. The masks are definitely important and it's just a matter of time. I hope that the vaccine will come out and be able to protect us. And I mean, I think I'm like most everybody else. Don't want to wear a mask forever, but if we have to, time will tell.
Right.
Time will tell. In the state of Florida, where I live, it's the cases. We're number one in the cases. It's really scary out there that it's so rampant.
And speaking of scary, how can people minimize their own fear level? Because I know that, the media plays on people's fear and, right. It's just like it's this monster that keeps growing, the fear monster. And so what can people do for themselves to minimize their fear?
Stop watching the news.
Simple.
You're
simple.
Yes. And then watch something that makes you relax, makes you smile, makes you laugh. Again, it brings out, it's the difference between being mad and being mad, sad, or happy. Your body reacts to that. Our bodies produce the different chemicals in reaction. And the fear and the anxiety and that we're building this, we're adding all this stress hormones in our system, which heightens all of our numbers. It raises your blood pressure, it throws your sugar out of whack. It just throws everything abnormal. And so you have to get your body, so those are your hormones. So you got to get your body away from that stimuli. You got to work it. You got to work the brain to bring it back down to this moment, because that's all that matters is this moment. Yesterday's history. So what can we do today and right now to get that anxiety under control? Got to change the thought, visualize, meditate, whatever it takes, exercise, run, walk the dog, do whatever it takes to get you to change your thoughts. Read a book, anything that will help you change. Because once you feel that you have the anxiety and you can change, you take your brain to another place, then you forget about the anxiety. And then, of course, we tend to come back to it, but one moment at a time.
Right. Well, I actually saw a video of a woman who's 90 years old and she does yoga. And I mean, this woman can do the splits and she's 90 and I'm like, oh my gosh, am I going to be like that at 90? But she said, problems are going to exist. It's like you can't make problems disappear, but through yoga and meditation, you can actually deal with the problems on a whole different level. So it's basically what you just said, do something to get out of your state of mind that you're currently in to become more productive. So I've been talking with Maureen Healy, who is the author of Your Guide to a Safe and Swift Hospital Stay, available on Amazon. And Maureen, in closing, what final thoughts do you have for the listeners? I just want to thank you so much because you've shared a wealth of information. You're doing some phenomenal work out in the world, and I wish you the best success in growing your business so that you can help more people. And I want you to get that book out of your head and onto paper for your second book for patient advocacy. So what are your final thoughts for people?
Stay positive, stay kind, treat everyone the way you want to be treated, and just keep thinking positive. Absolutely.
Okay. And you can find her at virtualhealing.com. This is Kathleen Gage with Power Up for Profits podcast show. Thank you for listening, and we wish you a lot of health, a great day, and lots of abundance.
Thank you, Kathleen.